You write in the latest Mother Jones, you quote Anna Dennis, executive director of Common Cause Georgia, and this is a great quote. This bill is Jim Crow with a suit and tie.
That's absolutely right, Jonathan, because you look at just the provision eliminating Sunday voting. That, as you mentioned, is when Black churches do souls to the polls, voter mobilization drives. Black voters in Georgia are about 30% of the electorate, but they were 37% of those people that voted on Sunday. And this is a real tell here because this has nothing to do with election integrity.
Election integrity. If the Democrats really cared about election integrity, they wouldn't be doing everything they could to keep third parties off of ballots, always listed last when they are on, keeping voters uninformed about third parties or, if possible, unaware they even exist and out of debates. I'm going to focus on the presidential debates and how the Democrats are up in arms about the Republicans trying incredibly strenuously to suppress the vote across the country, and how hypocritical it is of them to be crying foul when the Democrats have been part of the derp machine that has kept this country a two-party system going on centuries now. But while that is the focus, I will digress a moment and address the fact that the media plays along with the derp conspiracy to keep third parties out of the system. And while you can usually vote third party, part of the system that ensures electability is exposure. And denying candidates exposure and the perception of legitimacy that exposure bestows upon one is to deny a candidate a fair and equal shot at winning an election. In short, the playing field is not level, and gravity is working in favor of the derps and against everyone else. And the media is a great part of this. I don't think it is actually a conspiracy as much as a conspirignorans, a scheme that has evolved by the understanding of how it works by a few of the more perceptive and implicitly promoted, and unintentionally practiced by a great number of useful idiots who peripherally understand the underlying rules and adopt them. But however it came about, whenever a third party is mentioned by the media, it is almost always independent, which is not a true party. And yes, there is an independent party of sorts, but go look it up and see what a mess that whole situation is. And that's not even what they mean when they say independent. What they mean is unaffiliated. So often you will hear polls comparing Democrats, Republicans, and independents, with libertarians rarely mentioned and any other third party almost never. So, to hear left spin media reporting about the attack on democracy through voter suppression and presented as a heinous attack on American values and freedom is a bit of a farce, for the media, both sides, have been attacking American democracy and freedoms by promoting a two-party system in cahoots with the derps. Left spin media, if you don't want any more voter suppression, if you don't want any more threats of fascist authoritarianism or attempts to steal the presidency by force, if you truly want diversity, start acknowledging third parties. A two-party system is only one party away from being a one-party system. As left-leaning as I am compared to my libertarian mates, I know a Democrat one-party system wouldn't have the strength of character or underhandedness or whatever to hold on to power long. And few would want a one-party Republican system, and those few would soon realize their mistake if that ever came to pass. In short, a one-party system would spell the end of what we've enjoyed over the last couple of centuries. And as harsh and unforgiving as that has been for some groups, we will not strive to form a more perfect union with any one group in control. Power corrupts, and that is almost absolute concerning any individual or group. It does not behoove the media or the derps to try to maintain a two-party system, no matter how beneficial it may seem in the short term. Diversity is a strength, and if American politics thinks it knows better than nature, try to keep in mind nature has a much longer record of success than American politics. Besides, being the least democratic democracy in the world is something of an embarrassment, given we're supposed to be a bastion and example of democracy, not the only country, just slightly better than the one-party countries. While there is much to admire about America, there are also certain things to be ashamed of. Our system of politics and governance has devolved to that point. It needs to be fixed, and the derps are not going to fix it. They're the ones wrecking it. The presidential debates started in 1960, sponsored by the networks, and since then has been sponsored by the League of Women Voters, then the Commission on Presidential Debates, and that's a very simple summation of the history of the debates. But for the sake of this discussion, only two candidates have ever been on the debate stage who weren't derps. That was John Anderson and Ross Perot, both running as independents. It's easy to understand why the derps, who now run what is less a debate than a corporation/derp love fest, don't want anyone other than derp candidates attending. But even when it was the League of Women Voters and the networks running the show, derps were almost exclusively the attendees. The Democrats are whining now about voter suppression by Republicans, but they never whined about other parties being shunted from access to voters by their gerrymandering, keeping other parties out of the debates, and other shifty means of manipulation. Democrats have recently been crying out for diversity, but when it comes to a more diverse slate of candidates at the presidential debates, they don't support that. When it comes to joining in third-party debates, in the interest of engaging with the other more diverse candidates in terms of political philosophy and whom they represent, they don't support that. Between the derps, and especially where the debates are concerned, and the media and how they painstakingly point out how most Americans want a third party, and just as painstakingly avoid mentioning any third parties any chance they can, they are thoroughly embedded in the notion of a two-party system, whether they are willing to admit that to themselves or not. Yes, the Republicans are trying to destroy democracy with voter suppression, and yes, this is to be feared and fought against with everything we have, but not for the benefit of the Democrats. The Democrats have struggled with the Republicans for decades to maintain the two-party system. Now it's coming round to bite them in the ass, and they're crying foul. We'll help stop the Republicans, but only if that means doing what it takes to dismantle the two-party system. If you can't see your own hypocrisy, shame on you. There's no shame on us. We see right through it. Do what you can to help here. Subscribe, ring the bell, comment, like, and by all means, when you're out there, vote third party. And if there's not a third party offered, always vote against the incumbent. We don't want these people getting comfortable. Thank you for watching. Talk to you soon.